I never imagined that the two people I trusted the most, my fiancé and my cousin, could be the ones to break me in the most brutal way. You always think betrayal happens to other people, that you'd somehow see it coming, but when it's happening right under your nose, masked behind smiles and shared meals, it becomes nearly impossible to detect. We were planning a wedding. I was picking out dresses, thinking about flower arrangements, practicing writing my new last name like some teenage girl. You can heal that wound. They were sneaking behind my back, whispering in hallways, and creating their own twisted little secret. And the worst part, I didn't even find out from them. It was a message, a completely random, anonymous message, sent to me through social media. Just a screenshot, no explanation, no words, just undeniable proof. My cousin, the one who used to braid my hair when we were little girls, and my fiancé, the man I thought I was going to spend forever with, tangled up in something that made my stomach turn. I stared at that image for what felt like hours, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. My brain tried to deny it, to come up with a dozen excuses, but the truth has a way of sinking in slowly, like a poison, until it hits your heart full force and leaves you gasping for air. What followed was the kind of silence that screams. I couldn't cry at first. I couldn't even speak. My whole body just shut down, like someone had unplugged the life out of me. And when the tears finally came, they didn't stop. Days blurred into nights. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment in my head, wondering how long it had been going on, what signs I'd missed, how stupid I must have looked loving a man who was lying to me every time he said my name. And her, my cousin, someone who was family by blood and by bond. I kept asking myself why. Was it jealousy? Was it competition? Or was it just because she could? I remember the rage boiling in me, colliding with the sadness until I didn't know which one would swallow me first. People told me to move on or forget about it. But you don't forget that kind of wound. You learn to live around it. You learn to breathe through the pain. I questioned everything, my judgment, my worth, whether love was even real. It felt like everything I had built with him was a lie, like the life I envisioned was torn apart by a single act of selfishness. I felt small, discarded, humiliated, but beneath all that heartbreak, there was something else brewing, something slower, quieter, but far more powerful. A tiny voice whispering, "You didn't deserve this, but you're going to survive it. Not just survive it, rise from it." And that was the moment, buried deep in that pit of betrayal, when I realized this wasn't going to be the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a much better one. In the weeks that followed, I found myself walking through life like a ghost. People would talk to me, and I'd nod, smile even, but inside, I was completely disconnected. That betrayal had cracked something open in me. At first it felt like something inside me had died, but slowly, painfully, I realized that something else was being born. I had spent so long trying to be the perfect partner, the accommodating fiancé, the dependable family member. I had wrapped my entire identity around the comfort of others. And now, with all of that shattered, I had nothing left to give but to myself. That was where the shift began. At some point, I got tired of crying, tired of sitting in silence replaying moments that no longer had any meaning. I remember standing in front of the mirror one morning, staring at a face that barely looked like mine, puffy eyes, pale skin, hair unbrushed, and thinking, no one is coming to save you. That thought didn't scare me, it empowered me, because if no one was coming, then I was free to rebuild without waiting for anyone's permission or approval. I didn't need their apology to start healing. I didn't need their regret to reclaim my power. So I started small. I unfollowed them both. I deleted pictures. I wrote down every ugly emotion and then tore up the pages. I stopped trying to figure out why they did it. Sometimes closure isn't about getting answers. It's about accepting that some people are just broken in ways that have nothing to do with you. That was hard to swallow, but once I did, something shifted. I stopped internalizing their actions as a reflection of my value. Their betrayal wasn't proof that I wasn't enough. It was proof that they weren't worthy of my loyalty. Instead of obsessing over the past, I redirected that energy into rebuilding myself. I started going to the gym, not to look better, but to feel stronger. I signed up for a class I'd always been too busy to take. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the relationship. Slowly, the fog began to lift. I started hearing my own voice again. And not just the voice that pleases and apologizes and accommodates, but the voice that speaks up, sets boundaries, says no, says enough. And here's the thing no one tells you about heartbreak. It reveals you to yourself. I discovered a kind of resilience I never knew I had. A kind of quiet strength that comes only after you've been completely broken. I wasn't just healing. I was evolving. My standards shifted. What used to impress me didn't anymore. I began to notice how people showed up, or didn't. I started valuing honesty over charm, consistency over grand gestures, respect over attention. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. I didn't want to win the breakup. I wanted to win myself back, and as I did, something incredible happened. I stopped feeling angry. Not because what they did was okay, but because I no longer carried the weight of it. It didn't belong to me. It never did. It was theirs to live with, theirs to explain, theirs to regret. I wasn't going to let their choices define my future. I chose to turn pain into power, not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by using that hurt as fuel. And every time I looked back, it was with a little less pain and a little more pride. Because I didn't just survive what they did to me, I used it to become someone they could never break again. It's funny how life throws you the most unexpected people at the exact moment you need them, whether you're ready or not. I wasn't looking for anything, let alone love. I was still licking my wounds, still finding pieces of myself scattered in the rubble of everything I thought I knew. So when I first met him, my ex's boss, it wasn't some grand romantic moment. It was a brief, awkward encounter at a charity event I had agreed to attend months earlier when I was still planning a wedding. I almost didn't go. I stood in my closet for an hour trying to find a reason to stay home. But something inside me whispered, "Go anyway," and so I did. He wasn't what I expected. He was calm, composed, kind in a quiet way. No showmanship, no ego, just real. And maybe that's what struck me the most, how genuine he felt in a world where I had been fooled by false smiles and rehearsed sweetness. We only talked for 10 minutes that night, but I walked away thinking about how easy it was. No pressure, no tension, just presence, and after everything I'd been through, that felt rare. I didn't know who he was at first. He introduced himself simply by his first name, and I didn't connect the dots until much later. I laughed when I realized the universe really does have a wicked sense of humor. He was successful, confident, and already knew my story. I didn't have to pretend. He'd heard whispers of what had happened. Office gossip travels fast. But instead of pity or curiosity, he offered me understanding. Not once did he ask for the messy details. He respected my space and let me decide what I wanted to share. Over time, our conversations grew. It started with casual coffee meetups, occasional texts, nothing serious. But he listened. I mean really listened. Not like someone trying to fix me, but like someone who wanted to understand where I'd been so he could walk beside me wherever I was going. That was new for me. I wasn't used to being seen without having to scream. I wasn't used to someone holding space for both my softness and my scars. What surprised me most was how natural it felt. With him, I didn't feel like I had to earn love by proving I was enough. I could just be, and he didn't flinch at the messy parts. He leaned in closer. There were moments I pushed him away out of fear, because when your heart has been broken, sometimes safety feels unfamiliar. But he stayed patient. He never rushed me. He didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. He just stood steady while I found my footing again. I remember the first time I laughed around him. Really laughed. The kind that shakes your shoulders and makes your eyes water. It hit me like a wave. I hadn't felt that light in months. I didn't even realize how heavy I'd been carrying everything until he gave me a reason to set it down. There was no dramatic moment when I decided to open my heart again. It happened slowly in pieces, in shared meals, quiet support, small acts of respect. I started to believe that maybe love wasn't about grand promises. Maybe it was about showing up, over and over again, with truth, with care, with no agenda. And when I finally realized I was falling for him, I didn't panic. I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, I knew I wasn't falling alone. There was a moment, a quiet one, when I looked at him across the dinner table and realized I didn't have to brace myself for disappointment. I didn't have to second, guess his words, read between the lines, or search for hidden meanings. I didn't have to shrink myself to make him feel bigger. I could just be, and in that stillness, I understood what real love was supposed to feel like. It wasn't fireworks or chaos, it was peace. It was knowing without a doubt that I was safe in someone's heart. That was the difference. With my ex, love felt like a performance. It was always about doing more, giving more, proving more, just to feel barely enough. I had become so used to being on edge, tiptoeing around mood swings, miscommunications, half-truths. I mistook drama for passion, apologies for growth, and empty promises for plans. I called it love because I didn't know what else to call something that consumed so much of me. But now with this man, my husband, I finally saw what I had been missing all along. He didn't compete with me. He didn't need to control me. He didn't see my independence as a threat or my success as a challenge. He encouraged it. He stood in the front row, clapping the loudest. He celebrated the things about me that others once told me to tone down. My ambition, my opinions, my strength. He saw those as assets, not flaws, and that kind of love, the kind that lifts you instead of breaking you down, it changes everything. I remember one afternoon, after a long day, I was venting about something that had triggered memories of the betrayal. I felt that familiar knot in my chest, the one that used to grow every time I felt dismissed or unheard. But he didn't interrupt. He didn't try to solve me. He simply looked me in the eye and said, "You're allowed to feel all of it. I'm here." And just like that, the tears came not out of pain, but out of relief. That someone finally understood that I wasn't looking for a fixer. I was looking for a partner. He makes space for me, not just physically, but emotionally. There's no scoreboard between us, no keeping track of who's giving more. There's just mutual effort, genuine care, and a kind of honesty that doesn't sting, because it's rooted in respect. It's the small things too, how he remembers the details, how he never forgets to ask how my day went, how he checks in even when he's busy. Love, I've learned, lives in those little moments, and with him I see them every day. And yes, he happens to be successful. He has wealth, ambition, power, but those things aren't what make him valuable. It's how he uses them, how he never lets any of it make him feel above others, how he treats the waiter with the same respect he gives a CEO. It's integrity that defines a man, not his bank account. And that's what drew me in. That's what made me realize I could build a life with him. A life built not on appearances, but on substance, on trust, on deep, unwavering care. With him, I don't feel like I'm chasing something unreachable. I feel like I've arrived. I feel chosen, not tolerated, loved, not used, seen, not just looked at, and it makes all the difference knowing that this time I didn't settle, I rose. And he met me there. When it came time to plan the wedding, I didn't start with colors or themes or even a venue. I started with a feeling, freedom. I wanted every part of that day to reflect who I had become, not who I used to be. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a declaration, a line in the sand. I wasn't stepping into marriage broken or unsure. I was walking in whole, grounded, and unapologetically myself. And while some people plan for a fairy tale, I planned for a truth, a celebration of resilience, of love that arrived after the storm, of choosing joy after being handed pain. The idea to invite my ex and my cousin wasn't some bitter scheme. It wasn't a dramatic stunt. It was a decision that took time, maturity, and a lot of emotional work. Because by then, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't flinch when I heard their names. I didn't feel that pit in my stomach when I saw mutual friends post photos of them. What I felt was something much quieter, indifference, and with that indifference came power. I had moved so far beyond their betrayal that the very thought of excluding them out of spite felt beneath me. Some people said I was being bold, others said I was being reckless, but I knew exactly what I was doing. Inviting them wasn't about them, it was about me. It was about standing in front of everyone, including the ones who once tried to break me, and showing them that I had not only survived, I had flourished. I had built something better. I had healed in a way that no one expected, and the best part, I was doing it all without needing their approval, their guilt, or their explanations. I didn't send them fancy invites, just simple ones, no frills. A name, a date, a time, that's all. And when the day finally came and I stood at the end of that aisle, I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about him, my husband, and the journey that had brought us together. The vows we wrote weren't performative. They weren't about perfect love, they were about honest love, love that came after heartbreak, love that was chosen with eyes wide open. And yes, they came. My ex showed up in a suit that looked 2 sizes too forced, and my cousin clung to his arm like a prop. They stood in the back, just another pair of faces in a sea of guests. I caught their eyes once, no smug smile, no silent message, just a calm, neutral glance, as if to say, "You don't matter to me anymore, but I'm still here." That was enough. That single moment was closure I didn't even know I needed. The wedding wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about peace. And there's something deeply satisfying in allowing people to witness the life you built after they tried to ruin it without anger, without spite, just quiet, undeniable success. It's not the kind of power you flaunt, it's the kind you wear like skin, effortless, unshakable. I danced that night like nothing in the world had ever hurt me. Because in that moment nothing did. Every wound had turned into wisdom. Every scar had become part of the design. And as I looked around the room filled with people who had loved me through the darkest nights, I realized something simple but profound. This, right here, is what rising from the ashes looks like. Closure, for me, didn't come wrapped in some dramatic confrontation or a perfectly worded apology. It came slowly, in moments I didn't even recognize at first. It came when I stopped checking their social media, when I no longer needed to know if they were happy or miserable without me. It came when I realized I didn't want to go back and fix things. I wanted to keep moving forward into everything that felt lighter and more honest. There was a time I thought I needed to hear "I'm sorry" to heal. I thought maybe if they showed regret, If they looked me in the eye and acknowledged what they did, it would close the wound. But waiting for someone to give you closure is like standing in the rain and expecting the sky to apologize. It never comes. So I gave it to myself. I looked in the mirror and forgave the version of me who didn't know better. The version who loved blindly, who trusted too deeply, who made excuses for people who didn't deserve them. That's where the real healing started, not from forgiving them, but from forgiving myself. Chaos wasn't, and I choose how's why it's told. My ego wanted to rage. It wanted revenge, receipts, and dramatic exits, but my soul was tired. It didn't want a fight. It wanted freedom, and freedom didn't come from making them feel small. It came from no longer needing them to feel anything at all. That was the most unexpected part of the journey, realizing that letting go wasn't about being weak. It was about being strong enough to stop giving power to people who only knew how to hurt me. I didn't erase the past. I just refused to relive it. I took what I learned and carried it like armor, not walls to keep love out, but boundaries to protect what I had rebuilt. There's something powerful about living a life that no longer includes the people who broke you, and not because you hate them, but because you've outgrown everything they represent. I didn't need to yell or prove or punish. I just lived, and in doing that I won. Looking back, I don't regret what happened. Not because it didn't hurt, but because of what it gave me. That betrayal forced me to stop sleepwalking through a relationship that was never real. It pushed me to face myself, to rebuild from rock bottom, to discover the parts of me that were hidden beneath someone else's shadow. I lost people I thought were permanent, but I found a version of myself I'd never met before, and I love her more than I ever loved them. Now I live in alignment with who I am, with what I deserve, and with what I'm no longer willing to accept. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine, authentically, unapologetically mine. And the man I married, he met me in that place of peace. He didn't complete me. He respected that I was already whole. He joined me there, not to fix me, but to walk beside me, fully aware of the fire I had already walked through. So no, I didn't get closure in the way I imagined. I got something better. I got clarity. I got self-respect. I got a new beginning written entirely on my terms. And standing there on my wedding day, with everything behind me and everything ahead, I knew this with certainty. What tried to break me became the reason I became unbreakable.